So friends, here we go. We're going to have to talk about Rudy Giuliani's drinking, not as a punchline, but how Rudy's drinking might prove to be relevant evidence to Donald Trump's crimes. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, there's some new reporting that Special Counsel Jack Smith has been asking witnesses questions about Rudy Giuliani's drinking and his intoxication, specifically at times that are relevant to some of Donald Trump's crimes. Now, it's not at all unusual for prosecutors to explore issues of intoxication during the course of criminal investigations, whether it's intoxication courtesy of drinking or using drugs. And we'll talk about why that is often part of a criminal investigation in a minute. But let's start with the new reporting. This from Rolling Stone. Headline: Jack Smith's team grilled witnesses about Rudy Giuliani's drinking. The special counsel's interest in Rudy's drinking could play a role in undermining one of Trump's key legal defenses. And that article begins, Special Counsel Jack Smith's office has repeatedly grilled witnesses about Rudy Giuliani's drinking on and after Election Day, investigating whether Donald Trump was knowingly relying on an inebriated attorney while trying to overturn a presidential election. In their questioning of multiple witnesses, Smith's team of federal investigators have asked questions about how seemingly intoxicated Giuliani was during the weeks he was giving Trump advice on how to cling to power, according to a source who's been in the room with Smith's team, one witness's attorney, and a third person familiar with the matter. The special counsel's team has also asked these witnesses if Trump had ever gossiped with them about Giuliani's drinking habits, and if Trump had ever claimed Giuliani's drinking impacted his decision-making or judgment. Federal investigators have inquired about whether the then president was warned, including after election night 2020, about Giuliani's allegedly excessive drinking. They have also asked certain witnesses if Trump was told that the former New York mayor was giving him post-election legal and strategic advice while inebriated. Okay, friends, let's start with the basics. Why might prosecutors investigate issues of intoxication? Well, first of all, let's start with a defendant. Intoxication can actually impact whether a defendant can be held accountable for a certain crime. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're intoxicated, it may impact your state of mind. It may impact your ability to form specific intent to commit a crime. Now, I'm not saying these are often winning defenses, but they are viable defenses. They're defenses that are recognized in the law. Let me give you a concrete example. If somebody is charged with assault with intent to kill, that's attempted murder, but in the District of Columbia, it's called assault with intent to kill. If somebody is so intoxicated, whether under the influence of alcohol or drugs, that they have a really hard time even forming specific intent, that can actually serve as a defense to the crime of assault with the intent to kill, but it would not be a defense to a lesser crime, what we call a lesser included offense of assault. So a defendant might say, look, I was falling down drunk, I didn't know what I was doing, I couldn't even form the intent to kill, but the evidence proves that the defendant clearly assaulted somebody, even if a jury believed that he was so intoxicated he couldn't form the intent to kill. I'm not saying it's a winning defense, but it is a recognized defense in the law. So that's one reason prosecutors will investigate somebody's level of intoxication at a relevant time, like at the time of an offense. How about witnesses? Well, in violent crime cases, now we'll make our way to white-collar crime cases, but certainly in violent crime cases, whether a witness is intoxicated or not can be of huge consequence. Because if a witness observes something while they're under the influence of drugs or alcohol, that might impact their ability to perceive accurately, their ability to later recall what they perceived when they were drunk, when they were high. So intoxication is always a topic of interest when we're investigating crime and we're dealing with witnesses to those crimes. A little bit less so in the white-collar crime context, but still, you're almost always going to be interested in whether any of the witnesses, any of the defendants, anybody of consequence to the case might have been intoxicated at a time relevant to the facts of the case. Now, let's go to Donald Trump specifically. Donald Trump may try to raise what's called an advice of counsel defense. My lawyer told me I could do it. Therefore, I should be held blameless, and you should blame my lawyer for giving me bad legal advice or legal advice that might have prompted me to violate the law. What's the most simple, basic example of an advice of counsel defense? My tax lawyer told me I could take that deduction. So I took that deduction. Turns out I couldn't take that deduction, and I actually violated tax laws. Advice of counsel defense. My counsel told me it was okay. And there are 1,000 variations on that theme of trying to blame your lawyer for your own misconduct, your own crimes. Now, sometimes you have a viable advice of counsel defense. It's a legitimate defense. It's something that courts have recognized. It doesn't mean it's a winning defense because you still have some responsibility to do due diligence to make sure you're not just kind of recklessly, maybe with a wink and a nod, following bad legal advice, hoping it's going to protect you later. It's all a matter of degree. But it is a viable defense. It's a recognized defense in the criminal law. But if your lawyer's drunk all the time while he's giving you advice, particularly advice about how you can overturn a presidential election and unconstitutionally keep yourself in power, well, that is not the most appealing advice of counsel defense. So it may sound like a punchline. It may give birth to lots of memes that Jack Smith is investigating Rudy Giuliani's drinking and intoxication. But there's actually a point. If Rudy Giuliani is drunk while he's, dispensing legal advice to Donald Trump about how he can remain in power even though he lost the election, that is not going to be a compelling defense. It's not going to be a winning defense, because if your attorney is basically the town drunk sitting in a park yelling at the clouds, you're not going to be able to say, I relied on his sound legal advice when I was launching an attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, or urging state legislatures to submit fake electors to say I really won, even though Joe Biden won. Not a terribly compelling defense. And there's one more thing about the advice of counsel defense, and it doesn't have anything to do with Rudy's intoxication. When your counsel is actually your co-conspirator, your co-defendant, when you're in a criminal endeavor together, like Donald Trump and his lawyers were. Why do I say Donald Trump and his lawyers were committing crimes together in concert in a conspiracy? Well, because they've been indicted in Georgia as co-conspirators and co-defendants. Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and John Eastman and Kenneth Chesebro and Jeffrey Clark, the environmental lawyer who joined Donald Trump's conspiracy and corrupted and weaponized the Department of Justice in furtherance of Donald Trump's crimes. Well, when your lawyers are your co-conspirators, your co-defendants, your partners in crime, how compelling do you think an advice of counsel defense is going to be? Yeah, there actually is no advice of co-conspirator defense when your lawyers are your co-conspirators. And remember, there were a whole batch of lawyers. Remember how in the January 6th House Select Committee we heard about Team Crazy and Team Normal? Well, Team Crazy, maybe Team Drunk and Crazy now with Rudy thrown into the mix, Rudy and Powell and Eastman and Chesebro. And then you had Team Normal, right? White House counsel Pat Cipollone, Deputy White House counsel Patrick Philbin, and others who were giving Donald Trump sound, lawful, sober, legal advice about, not committing crimes to try to overturn the election's results. So the advice of counsel defense, in my opinion, is not going to fly, particularly when your attorney, Rudy Giuliani, was dispensing some of this crazy legal advice while he was in the bag. So friends, we'll stay on top of this story about Rudy's drinking, his intoxication, and how it might impact Donald Trump's ability to even raise an advice of counsel defense. But, probably a good rule of thumb is if you're going to take advice from an attorney, waiting until that attorney is sober, like justice, matters. Cheers, friends. Please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.